Ngāre Koi on the I said, oh, good to see Tāngata Tiriti.
Is she asking the questions?
And
and then that took you to these three.
Yeah. So Davide's Tavia's husband. And
yeah, we know.
I just want to go and support the lady.
Yeah, don't mind. Oh, they're all. Yeah.
Te mauri ki runga, te mauri ki roto, te mauri ki waho, mauri ora kia tātou kapua. Tēnā koutou, Nisa Bulaginaka, buonasera, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei kaupapa whakahirahira. Welcome everybody to this wonderful event, On the Couch, Reflections on Te Tiriti or Waitangi. I'm going to sit now. Now, before we start, we often in these spaces of kōrero and wānanga whakapuaki. Whakapuaki is to open and unearth, to draw forward, to share brief, and to collectively reflect on before we look forward collectively again. And so I want to first send my acknowledgements and my honour to those of us perhaps walking in grief or loss, bringing in energy that may seem heavy, and to invite you to lighten up a little, at least for the next couple of hours, knowing that we are in this space together in aroha and love for you all. The second part of whakapuaki is acknowledging presence. So before I allow our wonderful panelists and kai kōrero to introduce themselves again, because I'm sure some of us have been reading those bios, I do want to first acknowledge the whare that we are all sharing tonight, which of course is our whare taonga, a house that holds on to treasures, kahurangi, things that we prize as a hapori, as a community, and to Sarah in particular for allowing us the space for the kōrero to flow. The next acknowledgement, of course, is to Whaia Deb, friend of mine, whose vision brought this all together, and to her team, her colleagues, our kaimahi, who got us onto these couches. We were voluntold to be here, but it's absolutely our privilege and pleasure to be giving back not only to Deb and her team, Marsden District Council, but to the community that has sustained all of us in different ways over the years of our lives. Before I bring it to our space and who we are, I do want to just set the boundaries of the kōrero. Ko tēnei ko tamatea o iho mutu. And this particular lunar phase, or the first quarter of this current cycle, is quite tumultuous in nature. Two of our atua Māori govern this space. One of the deity's names is Tāwhiri Mātea, the god of winds and storms and grief. And the other is Ruauruho, the deity of earthquakes and volcanic activity, the unborn child within Mother Earth's womb. And what these two have in common, apart from being siblings of course, is that they're both blind, and so they're unpredictable in nature. And because of that energy upon us and the way that we draw energy from Te Taiao, the natural environment that we would call home, I'm very mindful that some of us may be quite naturally emotive during these times. And so one of the boundaries we would like to set is that this is a space of aroha and of sharing. And our panelists are here to simply share their life stories, and that we just honour that space and we hold it with a love and manaakitanga, support and respect for them tonight. In other words, yucky feelings and vibes are not welcome here. We do have security for that reason. The other thing is, because some of the kōrero may naturally bring up heavy feelings and sentiments and reflections, kei te pai tērā, they're called learnings and challenges that we can overcome together. We do have a kai on offer after the hour. So we will talk for about an hour and then we will invite you all to hang around and perhaps come and get to know us a bit more intimately in smaller spaces. And we would like you all to stay for that, which will be around about 7 p.m. The one thing I'm not good at is timekeeping. So if I keep looking up the back, it's to check in with Deb and our sound person. Now, if you need to go to the wharepaku, feel free to walk in and out of the spaces you need to. The toilets are right through the main foyer area. If you know Masterton, you know that it's connecting us with the wonderful cafe over there, so toilets are there. If we do need to exit the building in an emergency or a disaster, we will have staff on hand to guide us, and the meeting point is directly in front of the whare. I'm not supposed to take up the space with kōrero, so I'm going to move it on now. And I'd like to introduce my wonderful husband sitting on the couch next to me tonight. What I'm going to ask our panelists to start with is to simply introduce themselves, to think about their why. In other words, why are you here tonight? And why? Water. Who are your waters? What is it that sustains you and makes you who you are? Yeah.
Buonasera a tutti, tēnā tātou katoa, ko Davide Ahau, no Italia ku tipuna, I tupu ahau I te maru o te manga o Etna, I te taha I te awa o Achi, I te rohe a iwi o Hihiria. Ko tēnei whenua te tūranga wawe o Takutao, a te atahia, o tira a mawa tamariki hoki. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Hi everyone, my name is Davide Castorina. I'm originally from Italy. I was born in Rome, and my family is from Sicily, from down south. I came to Aotearoa-New Zealand in 2008 with the intention of being here for just 1 year, but then towards the end of the year I met a very attractive Wahinetoa, and the story and the plan has changed since then, and we now have two beautiful tamariki together. My journey as a Tāngata Tiriti starts from Europe, from Italy. I grew up in a very Eurocentric context where the stories that we got told of our discovering new words and having that word room. My school was literally across the road from St. Peter's Square, and that's where the Doctrine of Discovery was written in sign. If you something about Doctrine of Discovery, have a look at it, because they tell us a lot. And so, like, what I told, for example, I always use the example of Christopher Columbus, or Christopher Columbus, we call it. It was depicted as a hero for us Italians, that he went and discovered a new world. We even had cartoon series that as kids we would watch too. And it wasn't until one day I went with Tahi, actually, went to a corridor we're going to listen to this guy's very famous, I never heard of him. And his name was Warner Jackson, and he started talking about, he was talking about Christopher Columbus in a very different way. And I understood why Native Americans are now Indians, so they never were told that. He actually thought they went the wrong way, so when you mean that, that's why Native Americans were told that. So, and from there, my interest obviously grew. Growing up in Moafne and family in Maori, I started doing research, I got education, and thanks to Raihana PPP and in the US, I did Te Tiriti educator training, and I started also teaching Tiriti training as well. So, and I'll stop here.
I was really today looking at signs from our natural world, and water has been quite prominent for me today. One thing I didn't mention earlier is Tāngata, while it is a lunar phase name in the first quarter of the cycle, is also part of Tangaroa, and Tangaroa of course is water, so there's going to be a bit of fluidity tonight, because I think water, yes, it's sustaining, but it's our highway. It's the connector of all of us, wherever we come from. So we thought we'd start with Davide's introduction, because of course he's right on the other side of the map to Aotearoa, and Sicily and Rome, right up there, and we're kind of slowly making our way back to the wonderful Pacific Islands. We'll get to the more specifics of that with Tash, tēnā koe. Ko Waikoe, what is your why and who are your wai?
Musambu minaka, Managwa never saw an anomni other mine and Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, ko Natasha, Rutuva toku no whiti aho wiki aho, I te taha o tōku pāpā, ko Kandawu te motu, taha o tōku māma, ko Vonalevu te motu, I whānau, I reira, I te puake hoki, aho I whiti, I hunuku mai ki Aotearoa, mātoko tōku whānau, I te taurua, mano te kaumārua. Engari mai nei, kei Pirinoa, te whenua, Ngāti Rangai Piri, mātoko tōku whānau no ona, e mihi ana ki a rātou. Yeah, it's lovely to see you all. I'm Natasha. I'm from a very, very beautiful place called Kandawu on my father's side. A beautiful island, and another beautiful island called Vanuatu on my mother's side. So I'm from Fiji through and through. And we moved here as a family in around 2012 for my father's work. He's an academic. So he got offered a job at Auckland Uni, and that's where we all moved over. And so I've been in Aotearoa since. In terms of weaving in the treaty, it's so interesting, because when you move here, labeled as quote-unquote a migrant, it's so easy to not encounter any kind of treaty education. And so, funnily enough, my first engagement with the treaty was I joined a gym, and then it just happened to be mainly Pacifica, Maori, and because of that proximity to that community, I was able to learn more about the treaty. And then fast forward, of course, meeting my now husband, Raihana, who happens to be a treaty educator, and also happens to have amazing friends who are treaty educators. That really expanded and fast-tracked my knowledge around the treaty. but also it located myself as Tāngata Moana, as an Indigenous Pacific person in Aotearoa, in New Zealand, and what my role is, what does that look like in my everyday, and that's something I've been really interested in. I'm an artist, I do that as, I guess, as a living role. But that's also something I think about a lot in my arts practice. How do I honor the treaty? Yeah, in that creative space, but also in my daily life. And those are things I continuously think about and trying to find more clarity around. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
We're helped beautifully by the synchronies of our Pepi and the Whare, who of course is Tasha's darling. So I just want to honour those of you who've brought your tamariki mo kopuna here. I do think they bring a beautiful energy to these types of kōrero, so thank you. Coming closer, we've been in Moana Pacifica, we're back on land again. Kia koe, Chrissy. Pōwai koe hoa mo te hunga e te puramo mai nei.
Tēnā tātou katoa, ko wai tēnei, he tawiru Pākehā hau, huri tēnei no ngā maua whakahini o kōterani, me ngā whira kākāri ki o Airangi, me ngā rangi hoki. Engari I te whake au, I te upoko te ika I runga I ngā whenua o te Aratoi, me te rangi. Me taku wai Māori hoki, tonu ana au ki runga I ngā whenua o te Aotearoa ki te ngai ki te Awakairangi. Ko Chrissy ahau. Kia ora everybody. So my name is Chrissy and I'm Tawiru Pākehā. All of my ancestors are from Europe, mostly from Scotland. You can tell that we're Scottish and Irish from my child on the front row there with that beautiful red hair. Sorry, they don't make everyone look at you. That is mortified of me now. Scottish, Irish, English, one of those kind of trios. We're not Welsh, but we're typically the full kind of Great Britain set. Maybe we are, maybe we've got some Welsh we don't know about, but our ancestors have lived in Aotearoa for quite a long time on both sides. And I grew up in Wellington, on the head of the fish, is what I said, the head of the fish of Māori. On Te Aotearoa land, so I went to Laogai Primary School and Wellington High School, and now I live in Te Awakairangi, or the Hutt Valley, in Te Ngaingai, which you might know as Nainai, and centre of the universe to me, as well as Wairarapa. And yeah, I'm pretty lucky to live there. It's a pretty beautiful space to be in. I live there with my beautiful child, Nina, with our dog, Snowy, most of the time with my girlfriend's 2 dogs, Roller and Tink as well. We've got 6 chickens also. And so that's my way, my waters. It's where I belong to, who I belong to. Why am I here? Because Steve Mullen told me, but also I'm also a Te Tiriti educator, and I co-own an organisation with Natasha's husband Raimania and our beautiful friends Half and a work as well. We do Te Tiriti Waitangi education, and I'll probably talk about it more in detail later. I won't go too deep into that now and tell you my whole life story, but just really quickly, I grew up as a Pākehā kid in the 80s in New Zealand and definitely did not know very much about Te Tiriti Waitangi, and the people around me didn't know very much about it and didn't talk very much about it, and when people did talk about it, they talked about it as if it was a Māori thing, like an issue for Māori, that's for Māori to think about, which is really funny when I think about it now, because Māori were already here, and Te Tiriti is effectively when you're saying about being a migrant, Te Tiriti is an immigration document, so it's really weird to me that we kind of act as if it's a Māori thing. It's really something that's written to talk about the, what are the conditions that other people might come and live here together with Māori as well. So strange that I didn't think it applied to me, because it applies 100% to me. And yeah, I'm here because I'm into talking about that, and I'm into teaching, but also really into learning. I've still got heaps to learn, and I think, a lot of my own community is can be a little bit afraid sometimes of learning or talking about Te Tiriti, and I think it's really important that we talk about it and model learning too. Like, you don't have to be born knowing everything, but if you learn something new and that can affect your thoughts about the topic, then that's, you're winning. I feel like if you can learn and shift as you gain new information or new perspectives. So yeah, I'm here to learn.
Kia ora, and you know, we are sitting here in vulnerability because none of us are keen on sitting on the couch and being on display. And I forgot to say earlier, so we will hand the mics over to you soon. You may have some quite specific questions you want to ask any number of us. But ko wai au, ko tēnei he uri no konei no roto i a Ngāti Kahungunu ki Wairarapa rangikāni Ngāti Ira. He tātai whakapapa hoki tōku ki te tairawhiti ara ki Ngāti Pro, ki Ngāti Ira no hoki. Ki te kōpū oru, mai make tū ki Tongariro, te arawa waka, Ngāti Whakau e tū Hourangi, Ngāti Tahu, Ngāti Wāua. Ko hurihanga nui ko te kōwhai, ngai noa whānau. Ko reiri, ko rūtene hoki ngai noa whānau. Ara he kōiwi anō oku ki Ingarangi, ki Horsham, ki Sussex, ko Worsfold, te ngā whānau no reira, tēnei Pākehā, ki mua i o kōpū tēnei. Tēnei a heki pō. My name is Te Tākia e Reina Whirihanga Nui, and all three of those names do have connections into my whakapapa, predominantly here. Some of it on the east coast, some of it in the Te Arawa or lakes regions of Aotearoa-New, and then I've got bones ancestry that takes me over to England. So we have that in common, which is lovely, Chrissy, and I'm just starting to learn a little bit more about my hohi on the couches as I sit here, because I too was a Wellington High School girl. I call Wellington home by heart. I spent most of my life growing up there, although part of my childhood was here within the bosom of my tūranga waiwai, my place of standing and my favourite place in the world, Te Tiriti. Which is of course out Glady Way. That's where our whānau urupa and whakakainga are, and I just want to acknowledge my mama in the crowd tonight who connects me to that space for being my main nurturer as I was growing up. But like Chrissy and our beautiful hoa here, knew very little growing up of Te Tiriti or Waitangi, and was privileged as an educator and a child of educators to have a love of learning all the way through my life, which continues today, and that is my why for being here, is to also learn alongside these wonderful kai kōrero and alongside you. So on that note, and I'm holding this this round, so this is for me, I'm a ho tutu. When I get nervous, I need to have a bit of a tutu with things. And I picked this up earlier, and it, for me, represents growth, and that's learning, development, growth. I really wanted to ask our panelists tonight, because it's in our title, Tāngata Tiriti, that's our subtitle. Tāngata Tiriti is a catchphrase, it's very trendy at the moment, but the question to you all, and I might start with Chrissy this time, how do you personally define being a Tāngata Tiriti, and perhaps just as in addition to that, what is something that you think you do to really show that and present that to the world?
That's a good question, eh? Well, I guess I was talking about it a little bit before, about my own learning about Te Tiriti, growing up thinking Te Tiriti, that's some Māori thing that no one really understands, and it all felt really murky to me as well. I felt like no one really knows. No one really knows what happened when Te Tiriti is signed, and no one really knows what it means, and I was really confused for quite a long time. And I actually went to university. I have a master's degree from Victoria University and studied Te Tiriti Waitangi at uni, among other things, Te Reo Māori and English literature. And I still felt like I graduated, having done papers for Te Tiriti Waitangi, and did not really understand what I still felt like it was murky. I kind of came out with my master's degree and I was like, no one really knows what Te Tiriti is about. I probably heard those words at uni and maybe started using them about myself, thinking tangata, person or people, tiriti, the treaty, person of the treaty or people of the treaty, maybe that's me, but I didn't have a very deep basis to talk about it, because I still didn't really know what tiriti was about. And it wasn't until I started was trained in workshops about Te Tiriti or Waitangi that I wrapped my head around it and realised it's really strange that a lot of us think Te Tiriti is murky, because we actually have really, really good evidence of what happened. It was really well documented and recorded, so we know the story of what happened really well compared to a lot of historical events. And we know what it says. And I know what it says because I speak Te Reo Māori now, and I didn't grow up speaking Te Reo Māori, but I learned Te Reo Māori as an adult, so that's lucky for me because I can read it. But also we have really good translations of it available now, so it is actually really accessible to lots of people who might But yeah, I think that for me, being a person of Te Tiriti is one to kind of acknowledge that migration, that migrant background or manukiri background that our people have here as guests on this land. And the generous offer that is in Te Tiriti. You know, one of the things that I think about when I think about what Te Tiriti offers is it offers a space for people who were not here and who did not belong to this land. You know, when Te Tiriti was signed, I think, is it 98.5% of the population was Māori, and there was only 1.5% of people here around. Don't quite me on this, I know it's being recorded, but that's a ballpark. It's around about that many people here were non-Māori. And that text was laying out the rules for how those people who were non-Māori living here should hold themselves accountable in their behaviour and have someone who was responsible for their behaviour here, and how newcomers coming from those same places in Europe, especially in particular England, could hold themselves accountable collectively for their behaviour and their relationship with Māori. And so I think that for me, being Tāngata Tiriti is about doing what Te Tiriti says, which is making sure I don't trample on Te Roranga Tiratanga, and that word kāwanatanga that's in Te Tiriti. To me, I quite often put the word honourable in front of it. I'm really interested in honourable kāwanatanga, which to me is about our collective responsibility as manukiri here to behave well in relationship with the people who are already here. And I really believe that we can and are in lots of spaces doing that, but that we can move forward to that, because I'm lucky in my job to get to facilitate lots of groups learning about Te Tiriti and see how aligned people's values actually are when they have access to facts about what happened. So that was a long answer, but that's what I...
But there was lots intertwined in there, including the really tangible example of Te Apoi Te Reo Māori, learning the language, which of course helps with access to more learning and more knowledge. And knowledge is power sometimes. Kia koe Moremia, Tāngata Tiriti, you would have heard David is of course a multilingual, so I'm really interested to know how he defines a Māori word or term that is applied to him in the way he interprets, and how you identify yourself here.
Before answering this question, I have to say something. Usually me and Tahi have a conversation with the couch in the privacy of a lounge with a cup of tea maybe, but this is quite an experience. So I forgot to acknowledge and to thank everyone for being here tonight to listen to our stories and to take your time just to do that. So now I can answer the question. So I work as a physiotherapist, so I work in healthcare. When I came to New Zealand initially, I didn't even hear about the Tiriti of Waitangi. I knew it was a Waitangi Day celebration, and I skipped that because I arrived at the end of February the year, so I didn't miss that for the first year. And then it wasn't until I had to apply to be registered as a physio in New Zealand that part of the registration, one of the questions was, do you know about the Tiriti of Waitangi? And then so we had to do a little bit of research, but tick the box and pass that through. And then from there, I started talking with Tahi with some heated discussion, coming from a different perspective, a few groundings here and there that motivated me to do a little bit more research. And now, what I can say nowadays, other than being a clinician and providing physiotherapy services to clients, I'm also part of a team within my company. It's called Wairarapa Connect. I'm the Tāngata Tiriti representative in the Māori health team. So we help and guide our company under the cultural competency and cultural safety. We do delivery training and acknowledging and learning how inequity in health is a kind of kaupapa and is present. Also, we do advocate towards equity in health for people. So our Western education for clinicians in general, talking about healthcare, it's all about mainly the treatment. So we are treating an injury, providing some sort of medication or services, and this is how we kind of value our intervention towards clients. our clients. But looking at an indigenous vision of health, for example, when we talk more about an holistic approach, and not just the physical health we're looking about, talking about different aspects, the social health, the spiritual health, the mental health. So all these need to work together, and rather than treating, we should support the healing of the person. That happens only if we have all those elements working together. So, for example, one example we've used at work, we've been promoting clinicians the use of the Wairarapa approach, or the Wairarapa assessment. For the ones who don't know this, in the 80s, Sir Megan Jury developed this method of assessment, and which was a simplified way for non-Maori to understand a little bit more about Maori health. And so we try to apply this to our clients as well. So we do acknowledge that there's different aspects that we do. So we know, for example, that we can solve all the health issues in the moment, but they may benefit of some other services that we can provide, and building a relationship with other Maori health services, for example, or not, we can then work all together towards the health of that person. And when we look about the Tiriti specifically, we have to understand and acknowledge the tikanga, or the culture, or the Maori ways, etc. So we want to, rather than impose, we are here to save you, going to solve all your issues, then say, okay, this is how you approach this, and let's be part of this, because we live in Aotearoa-New Zealand, which is the indigenous people of Maori. And then other things in terms of how do we support the Tiriti, we do it every day in our homes with our Tāngata, acknowledging either simple things like doing a karakia before kai and then going to the too, or making sure that we do it respectful ways of doing that in our whare. It's very important. And on another side note, we recently had a project for around a year now with other Italians that live here in Aotearoa-New Zealand, and me and 3 other Tāngata Tiriti Italiano, so they're all from Italy. We have started a podcast about the Tiriti in Italian, so 4 Italians living here in Aotearoa. And very proudly recorded the very first episode yesterday. So
He's well practiced at this, you see. He had a couple of hours last night in an interview. I was just thinking there are so many wonderful themes, and just to perhaps keep putting them back out to the room, because very soon we're going to get your questions. I'm hearing that Tāngata Tiriti can perhaps mean a more than decent manupiri, just really honouring that we've been welcomed in some way, and there is a way that we behave, a reflection or reaction to that. Leading and modelling, being guides in some way, or navigators in the various sectors that we work in. And I'm really intrigued to hear from our wahine o te moana, Tash. How would you define being a Tāngata Tiriti, and what are some of the ways you bring that to life in your everyday?
Yeah, I really love this question, because my husband and I talk about this a lot.
We have really relaxed conversations at our wedding, don't we?
Yeah, because one thing I like to think about a lot is the fact that Maori and Pasifika, or Tāngata Moana, have history and whakapapa that's intimately bound. And so when I'm thinking about the treaty, this whenua, Tāngata whenua, from a Itauke perspective, or indigenous Fijian perspective, the treaty is not the basis for our relationship. Whakapapa is heritage, lineage, those histories. But that doesn't give me a free pass to act out. In fact, I have an even greater responsibility to honor Maori, to honor especially Hapu. especially the hapu of the land that I live on, or we live on. And so after many discussions, I feel like and I cannot speak for the whole Pacific, obviously, it's so vast, but I think I tend to identify more with the term Tauiwi Fiti rather than Tāngata Tiriti, because as I understand it, is a relationship between the British Crown and the Crown and hapu who are represented by the Tiriti. And so now even more so, I think it's so important for Tāngata Moana to stand in solidarity with those hapu, with Māori, and also understanding that tino rangatiratanga looks different every hapu, and as long as you're aware of that. And again, I can only speak from as a Fijian, as Itoke. But yeah, I think that's like where I'm at the moment in terms of understanding that term, and also the context of being from we're from the Pacific, but I'm not from here, but at the same time we are related family.
Kia ora. I'm vibing on the hms and the has, so I'm just going to open up the invitation to Deb, who will bring a mic round, but I just wanted to check in with my hō here. Are there any reactions to any of the kōrero from each other before we maybe open forum it? Because that's the scary part. That's the part we didn't plan for. How are we feeling? Are we feeling all right?
Can I say something?
Please do. Please do.
I think it's so cool that you're doing that as a podcast, would you say? Yes. That's so cool. I just want to say that's so cool. I don't have anything clever to say about it, but I was just like, wow, amazing. But what you just said, Natasha, about that relationship between Fiti and Tāngata Whenua and Aotearoa. Moana Jackson used to be my neighbour, and so I was lucky to get to hang out with him sometimes when he was still alive. And I just remember a thing that he used to say when people would say, does Te Tiriti apply to other nations as well as it goes to sign with the Crown? And he would say, we don't, it was just a treaty. And there might have been so many treaties and agreements with so many different nations, and we never got the chance to find out what could have happened because it was immediately breached. And I think about that sometimes, and all of the other potential, beautiful agreements that might have been come to if we'd actually honoured that agreement, if the British Crown had honoured that agreement from the beginning, which they didn't. So anyway, I just thought that's not my whakaaro, but I just badly sharing one as whakaaro.
Well, more, put on one is ever present, I think, in this space, in this context. So very relevant reaction.
Yeah, I think I'll visit both Kore from Chris and Tash here. But I would quite like Chrissy was pointing before when we talk about the Tiriti and Maori thing. And too, when actually, if you feel aside, while you were here, they were fine. That was for all the immigrants, but it is for us, for me, people like me, they come here, that's important. That's why it's a surprise that people that come and abroad to New Zealand don't know much about that, even though it is still a living document.
So, Patuma, please keep this gentle on us. Whaia Deb has a microphone. Do we have any burning questions at this particular time, or shall we keep flowing with our waves of mourning? All right. We're obviously very interested. Okay, I do have another question. I have come from one of my many day jobs, and I was up at the wonderful Pukaha National Wildlife Centre, which I know is a taonga of ours here. And I'm looking out, and many of my rangipane representatives and whānau are here tonight. So I do want to honour our ahorua, our mana whenua, both in the house but also again, creating space for all of us to live here in harmony. Ngā tika hulu ki Wairarapa me tēnā koutou. And the taonga that is Rima for gifting us that particular setting. So if we think about Te Tiriti o Waitangi as a taonga, because taonga is something that we can treasure, and like most taonga, I mean, these have been sitting in my studio collecting dust. I don't necessarily have to interact with them and engage with them all the time, but there are moments when they have to come out and be not just present, but displayed and talked about and, you know, miri-miri'd and fiddled with. And I think taonga can be that. Taonga are both tangible and intangible things that we all think are important, and I think collectively can be responsible for in terms of nurturing and sustaining, and I love your word, living. And so if we think about Te Tiriti o Waitangi as a taonga, and we're apparently here to inspire the wonderful audience who have come along, and I'm just going to put it open, I'm not going to delegate anyone to this, so hopefully someone bites. How can we perhaps, you know, think about Te Tiriti o Waitangi as a taonga, and if that's not enough, what are some of the ways that you're already doing that, do you think? Nurturing Te Tiriti o Waitangi as a taonga.
I think that the talking about it and actually learning about it and potentially educating about it in this time than ever probably it is very important, because we say, I hear sometimes, we don't want to be in a position, but that's a political thing, but it's in a very political in a way, right? So we're talking about legal document, it's actually there, and sometimes silence is political too, so if we don't talk about it, that's also taking a stance in some way. So understanding, learning, there's really an issue of learning and educating yourself in what the history and because there are facts that they happen, and that they're led to the situation that we currently have. And I think it's everybody can acknowledge that, and that will be the beginning of, then everybody can take their parts, but not refusing to, no, I don't need to learn about it, just a mistranslation, this is some word that I had at the very beginning when I was here. It is not the truth, so yeah, I think that more, as us, if we know, just involve as many people as possible into learning and educating itself from there.
Yes, I can hop on that. Yes, the learning. I tell my family, my Pacifica friends all the time, one really simple, tangible way to honor the treaty is just learn the hapu of the land you're on, literally. And I talk about this with my brother too now and again, about how if I were to ask anyone in the room, tell me your address, you can tell me your street number, your street name, you don't even have to think about it. And I feel like that it should be the same with whose land you're on. It should roll off your tongue. You know, it's not that hard to find. You can Google or you can find the local Marae call. I feel like this is just a really simple, easy way to honor the treaty, to hold it like a taonga, and it's something everyone can do. And honestly, it took me a couple of years, honestly, to have the three main hapu roll off my tongue. There's many others in my in the wahi where I live, but you know, I feel like if I can do it, anyone can do it. And it's very practical. And knowing a name, you know, in my culture too, like Maori culture, their names are portals. They completely open your mind and connect you to the place you're on, you know, obviously. And I was joking about it earlier with someone. Once I was able to really know these names, like the walk to the mailbox is different, the walk to your garden is different, because your mind is just it's also a step towards liberation for your own mind, you know.
I'm gonna just piggyback on that because you're an artist, Tash. So that I'm hearing like that's a really creative way to see the world. And if you're walking through it with this information and knowledge, that must be really vibrant. So, is there anything about that knowing that has inspired some of your art over the years? I'm curious.
Yes, for sure. I think because I forgot to say earlier, I live on my husband's family farm. So we raise animals and grow food and all these kind of things. And so being out there a little bit, I mean, we're surrounded by dairy fields, but you know, we're still a little bit closer to nature compared to being in a town. It's really knowing a name and also being connected to Kohonui Marae and Mihana Ki Arata has really inspired the way that I move within the arts industry, making sure that wherever I go, wherever I'm exhibiting, I know whose land that is. I always want to make sure that Wanawhen are at the center of whatever kind of gatherings that we're trying to open or facilitate, and just always keeping them at the forefront of anything we do, because I mean you can't do anything without the land that you're on. That's probably what comes to mind straight away.
I'm hoping some of you will have a time to kōrero with Tash because her art is stunning, and perhaps you might want to ask where you can go and see it sometime.
I should say, sorry, really quick, I want to thank Aratoi, can I put Sarah at the back? Because Aratoi hosted my first solo exhibition here, and Wanawhen, amazing came to support it, Rangikane and Kamuna, so this is obviously a special place for me too.
Kia ora, hara te whalai.
Yeah, well, Tashi took what I was going to say, which was just how important it is to know about the land that you're on, but not just the land that you're on, like everywhere that I go in Aotearoa, everything that I read now, I'm like, oh, what's the story of the people of that place? That is the first thing that I think, because often we don't have access to that as well. Like some stories are really privileged in our communities and others aren't, so you have to seek them out actively sometimes. But I was thinking, because you already said that, Tash, I'll just riff on it a little bit. Sometimes as a facilitator and a teacher who teaches, like I teach about Te Tiriti Waitangi and I teach Te Mandu, and I also teach anti-racism, like how to hold anti-racist conversations without yelling at each other, like with faith that people don't want to harm each other at the core, that we all actually have a lot of aligned values that we can tap into. And sometimes I say, we're going to have a Tiriti training. People ask me, like, isn't that really hard? Like, isn't that awful doing that for a job? Like, isn't it so contentious all the time? I'm like, nah. And like, Tash, because Tash has helped facilitate Tiriti training to us and been to lots as well. They're usually amazing. Like, it's such an honour and a privilege to get to do that learning with people, because my experience is that we don't all hold exactly the same values, but man, like most people that I meet have a lot of values in common, like a lot of aligned values. Like people love their families, people believe in fairness, like most people. It's rare to meet someone that says, I don't think we should treat each other fairly. Like, I don't care about my family. That's pretty rare. I don't think I ever met them. So, people have a lot of values in common. And it's really, really hard to make decisions that align with your values if you don't know the context that you're in. If you don't understand the context that you're in, you're not actually in a space where you can make decisions that align with your values. You might even think that you are. You might think, oh, this decision is exactly in support of my values, but maybe it actually isn't, because you're missing a key bit of info. And most of us in New Zealand, we're missing so much info about Te Tiriti Waitangi and just the stories of this land, like the stories of this land and the people of this land, and that is sad for all of us. Like, that's sad for me too, and I found the same thing as Tasha. Like, sometimes people, what I found is that when people have access to good information, that we actually have really aligned values most of the time. So it's a really cool job. I feel really, really lucky to get to do that and to get to do it with special people as well. And we're not into shaming people, calling people out or saying you're bad and you're wrong. I think sometimes people in my community feel fearful of talking about the past because there's so much harm that happened, and we're connected to that colonial harm through our ancestry. It doesn't mean that we personally did it, but we have a connection. And that means we have an obligation, once we learn about it, to do something else, to do something in the path of justice instead of towards the path of harm. And people sometimes can be scared of that. It feels scary because it's new and different. You feel like maybe someone's telling you you're bad, but actually it's liberating. Like, it's incredibly liberating to be able to make choices that align with your values. And so that's what I think about. You know, who do you say that was Waitangi? It's like, yeah, same. It is liberating and beautiful, and it feeds you. I don't walk around feeling bad and guilty and, hitting myself. What's called self-flagellation all the time. Like, I'm here for moving forward and for making choices that better align with my values and encouraging the people around me to do the same. And learning as well. I definitely don't have all the answers. I think it's cool to be open to learning. I'm really open to learning. So yeah, that's how, maybe that's not even it. I don't even know if I answered the question. That's what I thought of.
Last opportunity, Tatoma, for any questions from the audience. Again, I just want to remind you all that in about 5 minutes or so, we will be having a space where you can perhaps come intimately into kōrero with one of us, or all of us, some of us. Got a question up here, ka pai whai Deb? Yeah, ka pai. Tēnā koe. While I'm here, we have a really cool tech team with us. So big mihi to both Ella and Andrew out in the back, just making sure that you can actually weave into the kōrero. Tēnā.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Renee from Tāngata. Thank you for sharing. How does everyone feel today about our current government?
Relevant to the kōrero, we'll keep it short and sweet so it doesn't get too political up here because we're educators, but we're also family people. So I'm in a state of tumultuous emotion, and so I equally feel charged and all over the place emotionally. That is my honest reaction to that question, and that's negative or positive, however you frame that, and I will leave that to land. Is there another answer on the question?
I'm happy to say something and then pass it over. I feel like, for me, what's really important, again, as an educator, is to think about how, it benefits politicians to make us not like each other, and it benefits politicians to sow dissent and discord in our communities and say that we're all here to compete over scraps, whereas actually there's so much, plentiful, bountiful aroha and resource and what's the English word for life-giving things for all of us. Yeah, wealth, not maybe money wealth, but there's a wealth of beautiful things that we could all access. But politicians are not who I do my listening to when I'm thinking about how we can share as a community, because they are motivated. It benefits politicians, especially on the right, if we don't like each other, if we're angry at each other, if we're saying, I don't have something because you took it, that benefits them. And we know that that's not my opinion, that's what research around politics tells us. So that's my answer.
Yeah. I think it brings us back to what weaves us. So we are parents, I think, first and foremost, and what I'm hearing from Chrissy is, you know, we're all going to be emotive in particular politically charged times. It's what we do with that emotion that we can control, and only our own. You know, we can only control what we can control, and so I think that's
A nice way to rephrase.
yeah, you know, and I'm only saying this because David and I have a lot of these conversations on our couch at home with our cup of herbal tea. So is there anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Mike, for the question. I think to keep it short and simple. We spent many evenings writing some missions in the last month, so I think that's to answer your question. That's what I think about this government. But I think that it is very appealing for people to hear that everybody should be treated the same, the law is the same for everyone. But knowing the context of what has led to this disproportion within human rights, this can't happen, this is not possible. So one reason, because we need to educate and learn research about the Tiriti and the history.
It's got hot in here, eh?
Yeah.
Trust Auntie to... No, I'm joking, but you know, where this conversation goes, so too does all of that emotion and the wondering. So I thank you for being brave enough to voice it. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll keep it short. God, I hear my baby, my like spidey senses.
Yeah, mama in that.
Yeah, it's been really, I don't want to say interesting, but you know, interesting, devastating, even gross to see this trend of, you know, this movement into fascism. And I think about how this form of governance is so unsustainable. It's going to collapse. And are we prepared? What systems are in place? And so that's something that my family and I think about all the time, which is why it's so important to support Indigenous communities and knowledge systems. Because when that stuff falls, you know, what will take its place? And so, prepare.
We do have time for one more question for Deb, and yeah, I just wanted tēnā koe. There was one, okay, papai, we'll do two. Why not? We're fluid tonight. Moana's in the whare. Kia koe, tēnā koe.
Kia ora, my name's Tom from Rotorua. Family's from Hawke's Bay, so Ngāti Kaununua from Wairarapa. Dad's family's Te Aotearoa, so Ngāti Parau, Te Aroa over Rotorua. So my question was for Chrissy. You mentioned on the topic of feeling like, or at least your definition of being Tāngata Tiriti, and I think you used the word guest, or at least feeling like a guest in New Zealand, Aotearoa. And I'm curious if you want to expand on what you feel like, or at least you interpret being a guest in the country is, especially since you said your roots, in the country is quite, goes back many years. And just to add some context, this pretty lady next to me, she's from Sweden, so I guess her as an immigrant, her as an immigrant, I look at those two types, 10 years versus many generations in the country. I don't know if I view those context of Tāngata Tiriti, so I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually did a training on the weekend of Hurunui in Wairarapa, so I think part of the reason Deb asked me to come here, even though I'm in Wellington or in the Hutt Valley, is that I have been really blessed with lots of beautiful connections here in Wairarapa, including in Hurunui, which Natasha was talking about before. And we did a training there, we did an activity which is a hosting activity. We were getting people to think a little bit about hosting relationships. And the word I used was manukiri. I think I used manukiri. Maybe I used guest as well. I'm a translator, so I'm a translator accredited with the Māori Language Commission, so I do lots of translating back and forth between English and Māori all the time. And I think sometimes sometimes as a translator we have to translate words, so if I had the word manuhiri written in a Māori document, I'd probably translate it as guest or visitor as well into English. But I do, it's one of those words I like, if I can, to just leave it in Māori, because I do think that the role that manuhiri play in relationship with tangata whenua, like on a marae, is tangata whenua manuhiri rau, it's not exactly the same as the English word guest or visitor. I don't personally use it exactly the same, I don't hear it used in the same way. Rahania was actually talking at our training about how when you come onto a marae and you're welcomed, how sometimes at the end your host will say to you, oh, you're tangata whenua now. And that's interesting, they'll say, oh, you're tangata whenua now, you've come on as manuhiri, now you're tangata whenua. But that doesn't actually mean that you now run the marae. It's not like that they're saying you're no longer like some randoms who showed up who we had to like suss out if you were safe or not, if you wanted to fight us. Like we've assessed that we're all in good relationship with each other. We had our karanga back and forth, we had our kōrero back and forth, we sang words, so we ate kai together, had a hariru, we're all good with each other now. And so there's that saying that you hear sometimes that a pōhiri can say, oh, ko tāngata whenua koe, ko tāngata whenua koe toi nana, you've become tangata whenua. But it doesn't mean that you can then be like, well, ko I'm tangata whenua, I'm going to take down, like, I'm going to put a kāinga my ancestor on the top of this marae. It's like you're not, you're there and you're welcomed, and like maybe now you can go help out in the kitchen and grab a tea towel. That's what I like to do when I'm manuhiri, is try and be like, well, how can I show my gratitude for being here in this space and being welcomed so generously, which is my experience on marae, and also my experience as someone whose ancestors are not Indigenous to this place. Here in Aotearoa, that's my experience with Māori. I feel like I've had lots of generosity, lots and lots of generosity. And so I want to give a tea towel. That's what I want to do. And so I think, I like the word manuhiri because of that association, that there's a huge generosity that I see that tangata whenua show to manuhiri, to say, oh, you're tangata whenua now, but it does come with an understanding of what that means. It doesn't mean now you can do whatever you want to our whare, or that it's more yours than ours now. That's a weird step to take. So anyway, I don't know if that helps answer your question, Tom. That's how I think about it.
Answers the question in terms of it traverses the generations. Like whether you just arrived yesterday or 5 generations ago, I think we can all probably resonate with feeling so very welcome. You feel part of the place, that you genuinely want to give back in some way and contribute to the functioning of that place. And Davide and I talk about this often, but I probably don't thank you enough, darling, because when we think about the marae situation and context, David is the one looking after my tamariki, so I am available to do my role on that marae without the distraction of having to parent physically with my babies. And that's a contribution, which is just as important as holding the tea towel and drying the dishes after the kai. And there are so many examples of that, so hopefully Chrissy's kind of created a conversation starter for the car later on. I want to go back to our person in the back, and then we're going to have a whakakapi. We'll close off this formal setting. We'll open up the kai and the free range of kōrero after that. Thank you for your patience.
Kia ora, my name's Sarah, I'm the director here at Aratoi. I firmly believe that museums need to be and should be ideally safe places for unsafe ideas. So I want to thank you for the kōrero today. I am one of those people whose whānau has been in this country for 5 generations, who came out of my master's degree knowing nothing about Te Tiriti or Waitangi. And I think what unlocked it for me was, for a lot of us, the lack of knowledge makes us feel shame. And I think as soon as I realised that rather than shame, I needed to turn on my curiosity, that was when things really opened up for me. So I was wondering if you could leave us with something about Te Tiriti that might spark our curiosity. There's no way in an hour you can learn everything about Te Tiriti. That is absolutely possible. I worked for 3 years in the room next to Te Tiriti, and I still am learning new things every day. So what can spark everyone here on their continued journey with knowledge and embolden people to go out there and learn more.
Love that. Enough with Sarah. Spoken like a true curator. Oh, who's vibing that?
Go before someone takes mine.
Yeah.
So I don't know for anyone who needs to hear this, there's only one treaty.
Yeah.
That's mine.
Kia ora.
I was gonna-
We're on the same mind here. How is that possible?
What are the things we see? Yeah, I think that understanding that when, I think Chris mentioned it before, that when the Te Tiriti was signed, there was a very, very vast majority of Māori compared to the non-Māori that were here, and now the situation quickly changed in a few years they are not respecting what they said before. So understanding that context better. There's many things, so that's why I can come up with a German one, because that was my German.
There's one treaty, and yours is about
the fact that the when the deal was signed,
conflict matters, I think, is what. Yeah.
Well, mine, maybe Natasha knew that she was stealing both of us. How about this? When Ngāpuhi made their treaty claim to the Waitangi Tribunal, the Waitangi Tribunal, part of their job is to look into the validity of that claim. And they have experts who work there that are historians and political experts and researchers and academics who look into the validity of the claim. And part of the Ngāpuhi claim is that sovereignty was never ceded when Te Tiriti was signed. So the Waitangi Tribunal, which is a government entity, looked into that claim for the government. So they did that as a government entity. But Ngāpuhi didn't necessarily trust that the government would look into that claim fairly, because the government founded themselves off the basis that sovereignty was ceded. And so Ngāpuhi also hired their own, got their own group of expert researchers and academics to look into the validity of the claim. And they wrote a book. Actually, Nina, could you grab it? It's in my bag, called Ngāpuhi Speaks. Aratoi can have this book if you like. It can be a 4 hours here. Tēnā Nina,
there you go, Sarah. We get some homework instead.
The group that Ngāpuhi put together wrote their findings in this book called Ngāpuhi Speaks, and they found without a shadow of a doubt that sovereignty was not ceded when Te Tiriti was signed. But what's really interesting is that that's actually what the Waitangi Tribunal found as well, and they produced it in a report called the Paparahi o Te Raki report. And so both groups of experts found the same thing without a shadow of a doubt that sovereignty was not ceded when Te Tiriti or Waitangi was signed. So I highly recommend reading this book. The report, Tāngata Tiriti report, is available on the Waitangi Tribunal website, and it's also pretty readable. Tribunal reports are pretty easy to read if you want to either find out more about the people whose names are the one. They're not as, sounds like it'll be hard reading, but they're usually pretty straightforward. So, yeah.
So ako and learning and growing and developing within that learning and knowing that learning never stops. Context is important. And that's just not the context you're entering into for that knowledge transfer process, but it's the knowledge you bring into that space and how much of that you need to perhaps quieten, you know. And then of course, this wonderful resource. For me, there are lots and lots of resources. I like to think of identity as my resource. So when I think of identity, there are lots of words that come to mind. I think a key word for us was moana tonight. So if we can think about perhaps moana as highways rather than as connectors. You know, we're not disconnected by the seas, rather they connect us in some way. So there's that kind of opportunity of what that brings in terms of your internal dialogue. And then I was also thinking about moana and this other tohu that came up, which is manuwhiri or manuhiri. If we were to rip apart that word and really analyse it, and there are so many people who've done this over the decades and centuries, but manu is a bird, and hiri or whiri is about weaving. It's about the idea that our manu distributes seed, and without them, we wouldn't be able to grow anything that would sustain us. So in other words, we're interconnected with everything around us, whether we want it to be that way or not, that there's an interconnectivity. And Māori and Indigenous peoples have always innately understood that, and the idea of not being settlers on land, rather you are on that land because we're not protecting nature, we are nature, you know, and so we become a part of that place, we contribute sustainably, but then we move, and that's the fluidity of the moana, so you need both. And in other words, we need all of us to be part of it. So hopefully lots of gems, lots of paona have been shared that perhaps inspire you to do more in your own whānau, in your own communities, in your own workplaces. Thank you again for being here. I'm going to close us off with the same way I started, and it wasn't a karakia, it was almost a kaikoho. I was talking about Māori, the vitality or essence of being, the presence in this room, and that Māori being moved in different ways. And I just wanted to close with that same thing. But as I do it, I just want you to think about where it's going for you. So we start with going downwards because we honour the groundedness and the land providing us kai, and our mothers and everything that comes with sustenance. And then we look upwards to the rangi, to the integrity of the air that we breathe and the aspirations and all the things we look up to. And then we go within. Māori is in us. We're all part of it. We've got our own uniqueness and our authenticity. And then we go waho to the outside, to the part that we all kind of weave in together with one another, that collectivity or the kotahitanga that's being used a lot at the moment. So as I say the phrase in the te reo, just think about those directions. And perhaps if you need to do it, you might do it in breath work, you might close your eyes. When it's said in te reo, it gives us an opportunity just to kind of hold that space, and then we'll open up our kai. Let's pray. Te Māori ki raro. Te Māori ki runga. Te Māori ki roto. Te Māori ki waho. Māori ora kia tātou katoa, arati he. Māori ora, e nano tātou.
Ai kāti ake, ka tika, me tuku mihi kia koutou, whakapisa pau, I te runga, nei, me mihi kia koutou nei, te suatai, koutou e whakatū nei, tēnei whakaro rangatira, te tuatai, kārua, a koutou, e whakai ana, ke korero, e o koutou nei, ngā pukenga, kua ato nei koutou, ngā mahi, e mahi ana koutou, i roto, i o koutou nei mahi, o tira, katika, e mihi nunu i tēnei ka koutou, mo ngā mahi katoa, o tira kia tātou o te whare, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou koutou.
Kia ora.